Then you have wool, of course, we all know. And what we're talking about right now is the 2% other. The question is, well, what's going on in Vietnam with respect to bio-based fabrics? And first of all, it's very small. And here's an example of Next Evo. They're from Singapore, and they just started their operation of their plant this year. And my favorite is Yum Yum. They collect tarps and turn them into bags. So here you can see 3 typical Vietnamese shops that have the awnings that are made out of polyvinyl chloride. Hello everybody, I'm super happy to be here, and thank you very much for coming, and thank you Global Sources for inviting me. So today we're going to talk about upcycled, regenerated, and bio-based fabrics made in Vietnam, and all things related to circularity, sustainability, and eco-fabrics, with an emphasis on what's happening in Vietnam. My name is Chris. I'm an American who's been living in Vietnam for 15 years. I'm a Vietnam sourcing expert, and my mission is to introduce Vietnamese factories to the world. My style is to introduce people and factories to my clients so that they can work directly with my network in Vietnam. And today I'm going to introduce you some people and some factories, none of which I endorse, none of which I work for, and neither are any of these people or factories endorsed by Global Sources. But first, let's distinguish between raw materials. So there's biological raw materials, and then there's non-biological materials. And the difference is that biological materials, they can decompose faster back into the environment than the non-biological. So right now I'm going to give you an example of like how to upcycle silk. So you could collect, say, 10 silk scarves and then sew them together into a beautiful light dress. That would be upcycling. Or, as we'll talk more about later, in Vietnam, there's a lot of pineapple leaf fiber that's being used to make fabric, but you have to break the pineapple leaves down and then regenerate them into fiber. So those are examples of biological raw materials that can be upcycled or regenerated. I'm going to show you an example of polyethylene, like truck covers, how they can be upcycled into bags. And then you know, like plastic buttons, for example, if we could collect plastic buttons, we could melt them down and regenerate them back into things like plastic glasses that we'll talk about later. So just keep in mind that there's 2 groups of raw materials that have different properties and different functions and features. Now I'm going to introduce you to some industry leaders in Vietnam. So in case you want to meet other people who are experts in this field, Dave Quack, I've known him for over 10 years. He's really good at organizing events and seminars. And he has Green Yarn is one of his companies where he trades yarns. And he also has this company, World Fabric, where he also sells fabric. And one of his strengths is bamboo. So whether it's 100% bamboo, here you see bamboo denim, bamboo with cotton. So if you ever want to organize an event in Vietnam, I recommend you contact Dave. Then this is Xuân Jung. She has been in the business for more than 20 years. And her company is called Fast Link. She's also a leader in developing a lot of exotic fabrics. As here you can see lotus fabric. She's done like coconut, using coconut fibers to make linen fabric. And when I met her the first time, I was drawn into her booth because she was promoting fabrics made from fish skin, which is pretty cool. So she's a good person to know if you're into exotic eco-fabrics. Then there's Liu Vũ, who is an academic. She's got a bachelor's from Dalat University and a master's from Hanoi University in environmental science. And she's a leader in educating the farmers on how to grow their crops, specifically pineapple, to sell the raw materials from the pineapple to the people who regenerate the pineapple fiber into yarn and so forth. So if you're an academic and you want to get involved in the academic community, I strongly recommend Liu Vũ. And then there's Judy Nguyen, who her background is finance, and she's a data analyst that uses AI coupled with the government's import-export data. She is very good at being able to quickly find out who's doing what, who's importing, who's exporting, any kind of product really. But she is specifically focused on sustainability, circularity, and eco-fibers. So if you're interested in, she's also very well connected in the government. So if you need help with a big project and you need to know who to talk to in the government, then Judy Nguyen is a good person to know. Okay, so now I want to share with you some examples of businesses and designers in Vietnam who are upcycling, regenerating, and doing like bio-based projects. So the first one is Mr. Hoang. His brand name is Car. And when he first started off, they were designing from fabric scraps. And you can see world-class design, very great presentation, world-class scale. Then another designer is Tom Trent, who studied at the Parkson School of Design, I believe in New York. And he started off by using leftover dead stock for his collections. Very impressive, very professional, innovative. Then there's Franz, who's here today exhibiting at the booth. And he's doing interesting things with collecting plastics and then turning them into an accessory, which is glasses. Fashion includes shoes, hats, gloves, and glasses. And what's unique about Franz is that he's developed an army of people to go out and collect straws from coffee shops like Starbucks and local restaurants and hotels. And during peak season, he'll collect 100,000 to 200,000 straws per month. What I learned from talking to Franz is the importance of sorted at source. Remember back to the example of Goodwill, where just all the clothes is put together and without sorting. That's a problem. Well, Franz, he solved that problem locally, and he has just developed relationships with all the hotels and restaurants, and they help him by cleaning some of the plastic cups and the straws and sorting them before he even picks them up. And then he turns them into these beautiful glasses along with the cases that are also upcycled material. He's a startup that's running a business and growing rapidly in Vietnam, in the center of Vietnam. Next is Renew Jeans, which is based in Hanoi. It's just a small startup business where they collect jeans and then they turn them into beautiful accessories like purses, even apparel, jackets. As you can see by their Facebook page, they have 235,000 followers. Amazing. And it's very inspiring to think that you can actually make a viable business through upcycling jean fabric, for example. She's both a leader in the industry as well as a designer. Her name is Thao Vo, and her brand's name is Kilomet 109. And she's an expert in working together with the ethnic minority groups that live up in the mountains and cultivate their own hemp, as well as, her family has a history of making dyes from plant-based extracts. So that's her area of specialty. So she uses her natural dyeing knowledge as well as cooperating with the local minority groups to get the fabric, and she designs beautiful collections which sell in Vietnam and in Europe. And she also teaches. She has a video series online where she shares her knowledge about plant dye, or making dyes for textiles using plants. So she's a leader in the bio-based raw materials. Then my favorite is Yum Yum. They collect tarps and turn them into bags. So here you can see 3 typical Vietnamese shops that have the awnings that are made out of polyvinyl chloride and to protect them from sun and from the rain. And this company, Yum Yum, they collect the tarps, they cut and wash, saving the pieces that they can use, and then they design and sew and deliver. I personally owned one of these. I had a little pencil case. I loved it. And now, after doing this presentation, I'm inspired to go back and buy both a pencil case and a backpack. Because the cool thing about this is that they're one of a kind. There's no 2 pieces alike. As well as the material is very robust and strong, and it makes for a great backpack, and it's a great story, a great success story of a Vietnamese startup that's upcycling materials. So now we move on to regenerated fabrics. The thing about regenerated fabrics is it requires a lot of technology and equipment and investment capital. So they're all big projects. So the first one is Yagi, which is a Japanese brand. They have an office in Vietnam and a factory. This is their fabric collection, right? So they have a very, very clearly defined product range, and it's just these melange fabrics, and they're made of 50% recycled cotton that they collect from the factory floors, and then they add in other sustainable fibers to give it the properties that it has. And it's Japanese quality fabric that once you start using it, you don't want to stop. It's just great, great, great fabric. Then this is a Spanish company that's like 4 generations, started in Spain, and they have factories all over the world. But they have a factory in Vietnam, and they specialize in mechanically regenerating cotton fabric. So they'll take cotton fabric and then basically break it down into its fibers and then respin it. And they have their own special technology that they use. And they have 2 products. One is just 100% recycled cotton fiber, yarn, and fabric. And the other one they mix with what they call carrier yarns. So they'll mix it with like recycled polyester to make like a TC fabric. They're operating in Vietnam, and good example of regenerated fabric that's produced in Vietnam. The company's name is SYRE. I don't know how to pronounce it. They're from Sweden. They've signed an MOU with the Vietnamese government, but the project hasn't taken off yet, and I'll explain why in a minute. But what this picture is, they have a facility in North Carolina in the US. And what they do is they take polyester fabric and then they break it down and then rebuild it back up into new fiber, yarn, and fabric. And it's a two-step process. So like this whole building, well, this whole building is doing what's called depolymerization. And then the second building is polymerization. So they break down the polymers and then they build them back up. That's simple chemistry. It's obviously more complicated than that, but that's what their secret sauce is. But the interesting thing about this is that one of the conditions to go ahead with this project from the Swedish company's point of view is they're asking the government to allow them to import waste fabric, which is a problem. Because right now out on the ocean, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of containers of waste fabric like we saw at Goodwill, where it's mixed, it's not sorted, and nobody really wants it. Especially, well, Vietnam does not want to be the dumping ground of waste fabric. So Vietnam, and as well as many other countries, they have a very strict policy that they do not accept waste fabric. But the problem is the scale of a plant like this, there's not enough waste polyester fabric in Vietnam to feed the input requirements of these factories. So, right, basically the Vietnamese government and this company are trying to work out that detail in order to move ahead with the project. Next is XDD Textile. They make jeans. They're a denim factory. They're Chinese, and they've been in Vietnam, I think, for 10 years. And what makes them special is that they are fully vertical. They make fiber, they spin it, then they weave it, and then they dye it, and then they sew it. But they also recycle it in-house. Well, we have with us from Vietnam, Resource Garment Jeans Factory over here. When they're making jeans all day long and there's a lot of cuttings or clippings left over. And so like XDD will buy the waste from the other jean factories in Vietnam and bring it to their facility, as well as their own in-house waste. And then they regenerate all of that denim waste back into fabric, which just helps their bottom line. Impressive and a good example of regenerated fabric in Vietnam. So now we move on to bio-based fabrics. Remember we talked about the difference between bio-based and non-bio-based. So this is a big picture. In the whole world, 64% of the fabric that's made is made from synthetics, and then the rest would be bio-based. Of course, we all know about cotton, and then there's what's called regenerated cellulosic fiber, which is basically bamboo, rayon, modal, tencel. And the big player here is lensing, which, by the way, lensing does not use bamboo. They only use wood. And I just talked to my friend who works for lensing, and he was explaining to me that they don't see any difference in cellulosic fiber made from bamboo versus made from wood. Just interesting piece of information. Then you have wool, of course, we all know. And what we're talking about right now is the 2% other. And the question is, well, what's going on in Vietnam with respect to bio-based fabrics? And first of all, it's very small. And here's an example of Next Evo. They're from Singapore, and they just started their operation of their plant this year. And they buy the pineapple leaf, and then they regenerate it, they break it down, and then build it back up into pineapple leaf fabric or yarn and fabric. That's really cool. And then this is, ramie is similar to hemp. As far as I know, there's no significant hemp manufacturing in Vietnam, but there is ramie. So it's a crop that grows well in Vietnam. This company, Ting Phuc, and there's another company called V Ramie that produce this ramie yarn, which has similar properties to hemp, and they sell it. Then there's this company called Tomtex, which produces, basically this project is related to like vegan leather. So they produce leather from mushrooms and from seafood leftovers, shellfish, shrimp, and etc. And it uses enzymes. It's very, very small scale, but it's a technology that they've perfected, and they're able to make vegan leather. And it's happening in the center of Vietnam. Here's just some numbers to give you an idea of the scale. So in Vietnam, every year, 11,000 metric tons of ramie is produced, and 2,000 metric tons of bamboo. I can't remember if this is yarn or fiber or fabric, but it's more of the relationship of the numbers. And then pineapple is a very small amount, the pineapple leaf that we just mentioned. And then for all the synthetics, you can see how big the number is, 425,000 metric tons compared to the bio-based fabrics. So it is happening, bio-based fabrics is happening in Vietnam, but just keep in mind it's a small scale compared to the amount of non-biological fibers and fabric that's made. So this ends my presentation. If you need help contacting people or companies that are involved with upcycling, regenerating, or bio-based fabric production, feel free to contact me. My specialty is taking people to visit my network in Vietnam. I can help you find factories. And here you can see me taking 2 clients. We were visiting hat factories on that day. So my name is Chris, and thank you very much. Remember, thoughts are things, and where there's a will, there's a way. And welcome to Vietnam.